So welcome everyone. Thanks so much for coming. We're very excited to be talking about ConsenSys Quorum today. Before we hop in, just a few friendly reminders, some housekeeping. Please make sure you're on mute. We want to ensure there aren't any audio problems, both for yourselves and the recording. We will be doing a Q&A at the end, so please submit questions along the way in the Q&A box. And then, as a reminder, everything today will be recorded, and the video and materials will be sent out after the fact. So no need to frantically take notes if you're going to hang on Rob's every word. So quickly before we get started, I'm Daniel. I lead the protocols team at ConsenSys. My role is leading our strategy, operations, and go-to-market efforts mostly. And the protocols team at ConsenSys historically has built Hyperledger Besu, our mainnet Ethereum client that can be customized for enterprise deployments, as well as extensive work on Ethereum 2.0, both with research and our Ethereum 2 client, Teku. The protocol team will be taking over responsibility for Quorum. I've been at ConsenSys for about 3 years now, and I'm currently based in New York. Rob, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Rob Dawson. I'm currently the group-wide CTO for ConsenSys. I also am involved in the protocol team with Dan, working very closely with him, particularly around the technical side of anything pertaining to the protocols. And so I've been, I guess, working really closely with him for that work over about that same sort of 3-year period. And also have really enjoyed working with Sam from JP Morgan over that time, and collaborating with him on a number of different areas. And so I'm really excited for where we are today and the relationship that we've got. And yeah, it probably makes sense for me to hand straight off to Sam to introduce himself.
Sure, thank you, Rob. I'm as excited to be here, of course. So I lead the Quorum engineering team at JP Morgan. I've been working on Quorum as the first engineer since 2015. That's when we started working on the project. And besides that, I led the work to open source Quorum, and it was the first open source project for JP Morgan on GitHub.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. So before we dive into things, just a quick review of the agenda. We'll be discussing how we got to this point in the history behind the partnership between ConsenSys and JP Morgan. We'll be discussing ConsenSys Quorum, what it is today, how does it fit into the consensus stack, the product stack, and the broader enterprise Ethereum community. We'll give an overview on why ConsenSys, Quorum, JP Morgan came together to make this deal happen, and then we'll dive into the roadmap. And as I mentioned already, we'll be taking questions at the end, so we've carved out a chunk of time to go through Q&A. And so with that, let's get started with a brief look back. So here's a super quick history of enterprise Ethereum, primarily as it relates to ConsenSys and JP Morgan. The Ethereum White Paper Network was launched 15% of the technology. By growing the community, investing in the space, and building the core tools for enterprises to use the software. And with this in mind, ConsenSys created protocol engineering groups and systems, better known as Pegasus, in about 2017. And that's when I joined, that's when Rob joined. And over the last years, we've grown to be about a 65-person team working on a few different technology areas. And core to our tech is Ethereum 1.0. We launched as Pantheon, our Ethereum 1.0 client in 2018, then contributed to the Hyperledger Foundation in 2019 as Hyperledger Besu. And so in parallel to this journey, Quorum was created by JP Morgan. As Sam said, they started work on 2015. It was open source in 2016 as a fork of Geth targeting enterprise use cases. And this was a major innovation in the space and served as an inspiration for a lot of the work ConsenSys has done over the years. JP Morgan, though, didn't stop there. They've obviously been building on Quorum since, but on top of that, they've been innovating at the application layer as well. So they launched the Interbank Information Network, IIN, in 2017, and then later JPM Coin, among a number of other applications. And I think publicly available, you can see IIN alone has hundreds of banks signed up. And so at ConsenSys, even while we've been building Hyperledger Besu, we worked extensively on Quorum as well. We very recently helped launch Covantis, a production network that leverages the Quorum technology. We're remarkably excited to be bringing both protocol work streams under the ConsenSys Quorum brand and continue to support IIN, JPM Coin, Covantis, and the dozens of other production use cases already live. And so with that, I'll hand over to Sam to discuss our history of collaboration in a little bit more detail.
Sure, thank you, Dan. So I think we've been collaborating with the ConsenSys team in general for a long time. I think it started by meeting some of the engineers, as the ConsenSys office is actually close to our Brooklyn office, the JP Morgan Brooklyn office in Brooklyn. And then we worked together on multiple use cases for build and support, as you just mentioned earlier. Our blockchain product team, led by Christine Moy, worked closely with the ConsenSys team on co-founding EEA. And then more recently, we've been working together through multiple specification working groups, more specifically on ConsenSys algorithms and privacy design. So if you want to go to next slide. So then I think I'll go through the Go Ethereum here, client, or the Go Quorum, and then you can cover Besu and everything else. So Quorum was released publicly in 2016, November 2016, but it was really around August 2015 when I started reviewing multiple Ethereum clients. Given my background in Java, I started with the Ethereum J client and looked at the Pi Ethereum client, and then Geth, given that the simplicity behind it and the adoption it had, and it still has. From there, we partnered with some of the Geth developers. That was after I met Jeff, that was during DEF CON 1. And we agreed during DEF CON 1 on a design for Quorum based on a fork from Geth. Now, the Quorum project today, I would say conservatively based on the projects we transferred or under ConsenSys GitHub repo now, it involves more than 20 open source repos. And besides the Go Quorum client, they are Apache licensed. Now, those services, plugins, and projects are used by multiple other organizations besides JPM. So Dan, if you want to cover Besu and the rest of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we sort of mentioned already, Hyperledger Besu is a mainnet Ethereum client. You can run a mainnet Ethereum node today using Hyperledger Besu, and it's also customizable for enterprise deployments. So it has privacy features, permissioning features, custom consensus mechanisms, and the sort of tools you would expect to run in a private environment. And just for a little bit more detail, it's Apache 2 license, it's Java based, and we contributed to the Hyperledger Foundation in November 2019, so it's really plugged into all the work going on in Hyperledger. And with the partnership and this announcement of ConsenSys acquiring Quorum, we'll be merging all our protocol efforts under the ConsenSys Quorum umbrella. So ConsenSys Quorum moving forward will have two options. There will be a Java-based option that is based on the Hyperledger Besu stack, and there will be a Go-based option, which is based on Go Quorum, Tessera, and all the work innovated and driven by JP Morgan. And in parallel to that, we'll be launching ConsenSys Quorum support, which we'll discuss in a bit more detail. We're going to continue to advance both clients as open source projects, and we're excited in the way that this merger and unification will grow the enterprise Ethereum ecosystem and community and support adoption of production use cases as we move forward. So with that, let's dive a little bit deeper into what actually is ConsenSys Quorum. And so before getting more broad, I wanted to speak a little bit to existing Quorum users, those of you that might be here today. ConsenSys is 100% committed to open source and to maintaining Quorum as an open source code base, developing new features, ensuring that applications on top of Quorum continue to be successful as production applications and test environments, whatever you need as part of ConsenSys Quorum. So I think it's really important for all existing Quorum users, as this transition happens, this should only be good news, and you're investment in Quorum will hopefully be rewarded with more tools, more features, and more information on your roadmap. In terms of the people building Quorum from our side, JP Morgan, the Quorum dev team will be working closely over the next year with the ConsenSys protocol team on the roadmap and support. ConsenSys will have a dedicated team to support both clients. Currently, that team is over 60 people spanning R&D and implementation. And shameless plug, we are hiring. If any of you out there are interested in working at the protocol layer in Golang or DevOps or Java, please email me. My email's in this presentation, and I'll share it again later. So that shameless plug aside, back to the actual content. We're going to be merging the roadmaps for Quorum and Hyperledger Besu, and this will enable us to bring the best elements of both implementations across to both clients. And this should meaningfully benefit users. We want to make sure that tools, features that work on one client work on the other, and so you have a rich choice on how to move forward with your application. Importantly, we also want to hear from existing users of Quorum to understand what you would like to see built and what you would like to see added to our roadmap. So later in this presentation, we'll be sharing our roadmap, but that roadmap will be customer driven. And so as you have ideas, please let us know. One thing we've also heard from the market is that some people want enterprise grade support to take their use cases into production. And so with the launch of ConsenSys Quorum, we also announced our enterprise grade support offerings. And in fact, JPM Coin and IIN will be supported by our support offerings as well right out of the bat. And so we hope existing Quorum users will feel as excited as we are by this deal, and it'll enable the continued success of people working on Quorum and now ConsenSys Quorum. So just to go back high level 1 second before we go more detailed, and just to make sure there's no confusion on the branding or product packaging implications as we transition. ConsenSys Quorum is live today. It is supported today, and it has 2 options. One option is based on Hyperledger Besu, our Java Ethereum client for both mainnet and private networks. The second option is based on Go Quorum, which is the most battle-tested production network with live applications on top. Right? So if there's one takeaway from this presentation, it's ConsenSys Quorum exists. It has 2 implementations, and we're excited to be driving it forward. So what's actually inside ConsenSys Quorum? To drill a little deeper, we've discussed the Ethereum client level a little bit, but on top of that, we have private transaction managers. JP Morgan, Sam's team, Sam himself has pioneered the peer-to-peer privacy implementation, point-to-point privacy implementation common in enterprise Ethereum today, and added enhancements as they evolve from Constellation to now Tessera, their private transaction manager. So Tessera will be part of ConsenSys Quorum as part of the enterprise Ethereum bundle that we're now offering. And in parallel, there's Orion, which is the default private transaction manager with Hyperledger Besu. It also enables privacy groups and some additional features. And one of the key items on the roadmap will be unifying the implementations to enable interop, but we'll discuss that more later. On top of the client and the private transaction manager, there's also ETHSigner, which enables external key signing, as the name suggests, and a bunch of other features. It's important to note that this is all open source, 100% open source, everything I've just described. A bit later in the presentation, I'll discuss some of the products ConsenSys offers on top of ConsenSys Quorum that are proprietary, but everything here on this slide is open source. It'll continue to be open source. We're going to support that open source, and we want to invest very actively in the open source community. Now, of course, also on the slide I've already mentioned the support we've rolled out. It will have different tiers ranging from developer support all the way to 24/7. We've already onboarded existing users to support, and we're really eager to chat if you're interested in seeing your use case get production and enterprise quality support. So at this point, I'll hand over to Sam to get his take on why we're better together.
Thanks, Dan. So I think you highlighted a long list of why we're better together, but I'll focus on 2 core ones that I'd like to reiterate. First, as a bank, it's very challenging to provide enterprise level support to Quorum users. That's something many people and many users of Quorum have requested over the last few years. So ConsenSys focuses on support and has been doing it very well for multiple Quorum projects over the last few years. Now, also from a team perspective, I think over the next year, we're going to be implementing services together that are important to our users, and it will enhance the interoperability between the clients. I think that ultimately is a value add for all the users of Quorum. So those are the main two items I'd like to focus on. If you want to go to the next slide. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. So, I think we would be remiss talking about ConsenSys Quorum in a vacuum without talking about the broader enterprise Ethereum and Ethereum community. Our strength comes in no small part from the Ethereum community and the hundreds of thousands of developers who build on Ethereum. By uniting Quorum, Hyperledger Besu, JP Morgan ConsenSys, and these products under the ConsenSys Quorum brand, we'll be able to offer and ensure that tools, applications, and software working on one client will work on the other. We'll be able to drive interoperability across clients. ConsenSys Quorum with Hyperledger Besu will also be mainnet compatible and supporting use cases that require mainnet, on top of the hundreds of large enterprises and large production use cases that are already using ConsenSys Quorum today across industry and across use cases. I can't articulate this enough. For businesses who want to develop on blockchain, working with ConsenSys Quorum gives you access to the massive community, the developers who are familiar with the technology, the innovation that the community brings forward, and the optionality that that provides for the future. And on this slide, we've listed some of the organizations that help support that community: Hyperledger Foundation, the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, Oasis, and Baseline, not to mention the Ethereum Foundation, some of the broader efforts. So that's something that's really powerful, and we're hoping and expecting that ConsenSys Quorum will support that as we move forward. So just a quick, I guess, slide on who uses ConsenSys Quorum today and some highlights of the existing users. And what I want you to take away from this slide isn't that there are some big names using ConsenSys Quorum. I mean, that's fantastic. But it's that they exist across industry, from luxury, retail, to financial services, that they have successful implementations of production use cases today, and they have a proven track record of implementations with dozens of products, various use cases. And we have developed patterns that make it quicker and easier to go to market and make you successful on top of ConsenSys Quorum. So, as promised, I also just wanted to speak very quickly to some of the proprietary products that ConsenSys offers on top of ConsenSys Quorum today. So all these products exist, and we're happy to demo them, walk you through them, talk through them. I don't have time to go over them all, but I'll highlight a couple. So the first is Codify Orchestrate. Orchestrate came out of a direct customer engagement, and it's a set of tools to abstract away the complexity of taking blockchain use cases to production. We have found that it simplifies time to market by as much as 50%, because it implements in productized ways the components that every blockchain application needs in production. Things like nonce management, event handling, transaction listening, and so forth. These are common components. Every use case, virtually every use case will need them. And so we've productized them and simplified them to make your use case reliable and quick to market. A second that's pretty popular is Codify Assets. It enables enterprises to leverage the token standards built into Ethereum for all your digital assets needs. So a lot of use cases rely on digital assets, and Codify Assets has been built to sort of supercharge that and make it easy out of the box. And the third I wanted to highlight was Codify Workflow, which provides standard business processing capabilities on Ethereum right out of the box as well. And so there's a few that I haven't mentioned: payments, markets, compliance, data. The names hopefully will hint pretty meaningfully to what's inside. There will be future webinars going through the Codify stack in more detail. But for now, I'll just say these are able to supercharge ConsenSys Quorum. And if you're interested in chatting with about any of these, please reach out. And so with that, I'm going to hand over to Rob, who's going to kick us off and talk through the Quorum roadmap.
Thanks, Dan. It's exciting to be able to share the roadmap with you today, and some of the things that we're going to be working on together to make sure that that we have a great future with ConsenSys Quorum. The thing that I want to highlight around this as I step in, one of the absolute things that we are very committed to is the success of both the Go-based Go Quorum client and the Besu sort of client, and helping to make sure that both are successful and work for people as they are making production deployments. And one of the key ways that we're going to be doing that, and one of the highlights of our roadmap over the next 6 months in particular, is around interoperability. And so there's three sort of big ways that we start to see that happen. We first of all see it at the protocol layer. The second spot we see it is in the plugin layer. And then the third area that we think interoperability is really important is being able to talk across different networks, across ledgers. So as we think about the protocol layer, there's the three things there that really stand out for interop at a protocol layer in an Ethereum space. The first is the consensus mechanism. So that's the BFT that's listed there. The second is in the privacy space. So the private transaction manager support, Orion and Tessera that Dan was talking about earlier. The third area is around permissioning. And so the controls that are in place to control who is able to connect to a network and the permissions of who is able to submit transactions. So those three areas are the key protocol areas of interop that we're looking at. That second area around the plugins is around us being able to develop and others being able to develop plugins that work on either client. So plugins that will be able to use and work on Go, our Go-based client and our Java-based client. And again, that third area of making sure that we're able to have different networks are able to work together and have transactions and things that you're able to do atomic swaps between different ledgers is another sort of key area of interoperability that we're going to be focusing on in our roadmap going forward. And so as we look a little bit more into the details and this in terms of a timeline, I'll do a sort of brief overview of what this overall sort of looks like. Sam will dive into some of the enterprise features, and then I'll talk some more to the mainnet, and particularly around the Besu work and things that will be happening there. So again, you can see some of those things that I was talking about before around the interop, starting with a permissioning-based sort of interop work, which is the focus of where a lot of things are happening right now. There's another sort of some of the longer term streams are under development at the moment. So that Q4, while it looks small, there's a lot of work that's happening at the moment, and there's a lot of feet kicking underneath the water to make sure that we're getting the right software for you. You can see in Q1, there's our sort of goal of getting the release of the consensus mechanism, the BFT-based interop happening, and privacy-based interop. And then we can sort of see as we move forward through this plan, the enterprise features that are going to be there, things like the optimizations on BFT, which Sam will dig into just a little bit, and then yeah, I guess more and more sort of as we move forward. I think this is the right moment for me now to hand off to Sam to talk through some of those enterprise features.
Thanks, Rob. So I'll start specifically on IBFT. So what we're doing there is we're enhancing the integration with the clients that will give us much higher throughput. The design we've been thinking through is by creating blocks on demand. So as transactions come through in the mempool, we'll be creating blocks. We will not have to wait for, let's say, a pre-configured block time, whether it's 1 second or 10 seconds. One thing we're going to account therefore is basically when smart contracts are deployed, given that we'll have sub-second time, we'll be accounting for that, and probably it will go part of the extra data if you're familiar with IBFT, not to go through too many details here. Now that works well for permissioned networks. I don't think it will work as well for mainnet or public networks. Now, in terms of tooling, we're going to focus a lot on enhancing the tools available. I spoke earlier about the number of projects that we have open sourced for tools available for the stack. So we don't want the engineers to continue to create their own, let's say, monitoring, key management, and integrating or integration services with authentication and authorization services. So we've built plugins, we've built different services to make that available. Many of them have been built, open sourced and available, and we're going to make sure that they're working for both clients or available for both clients. Now, the authorization plugin that we've introduced recently, that will help us enable multiple users or multiple entities to share the same node, but limit their state access. Some users refer to it as multi-tenancy, but the idea is to be able to share the same node without having access to the entire private state. Now, one more thing, of course, in terms of IBFT, we're gonna be implementing the IBFT design we recently published. I think we published it last month, and it's available, and we're going to make sure it's available in both clients, so that will enhance the interoperability between the clients. And the same thing in terms of a focus on users upgrading their existing networks. We want to make sure it's a seamless upgrade as they work with either client, and we enhance the IBFT consensus algorithm or any other feature. We're just going to make it a seamless upgrade for them. That's something that does significantly take a good amount of time, and hence the roadmap, as you see, over different quarters or different a longer 2021 period.
So thanks, Sam. And I think I'll dive into the mainnet sort of side. Before I do that, I think again, just re-highlighting again that our interledger integration is something that we think is really important. The first starting point for that is across different quorum networks, and being able to have the ability to do some sort of bridge or technology there. The details, you can see that that's sort of our longer term sort of vision. The exact technology details of what that's going to look like is going to be sort of worked on and iterated on as we get closer to that time. But it's really making it so that we can get those communications and messages and asset transfers across different quorum networks, and then also being able to think about it across some of the other enterprise blockchains. We recognize that not everyone has made the choice to use Ethereum, but we want to make sure that those people that have made the choice of other technologies are still able to I guess, interact with their Ethereum networks. And so I want to make sure that we're building out the technology to help do some of that communication. And so that as we look at that long sort of beyond Q3 sort of vision, that's where we're looking in that. And I think ideally we'll be working as hard as we can to bring some of those interledger things forward in our roadmap as well. As we think though, I guess as well then in terms of our Ethereum world, we think is very much around the mainnet, and particularly for Besu. There are a number of areas that we're committed to in making work well for mainnet. And so the three things that I really want to highlight there are the network upgrades. And so you can see that there's the Berlin network upgrade and the London network upgrades are both very specifically called out. The second thing that I want to call out that is something that is both a enterprise sort of enhancement for the mainnet, but also for the private kind of consortium networks on the enterprise side there as well, is the database performance improvements. And so that's making sure that the client is able to sync faster on a mainnet sense, and then also process transactions quicker. And so I think that's sort of one spot where we see that innovation on the Ethereum mainnet also helps really think about how the innovation happens on consortiums and enterprise use cases as well. The final thing that I want to call out specifically is the core protocol team in our protocol engineering group has also been really actively involved in the EIP process and the overall sort of enhancements to the Ethereum protocol. In particular, there's a EIP 1559 which is talking about decreasing and finding ways to smooth a lot of the spikes that happen in transaction fees. And so there's some great work and thinking that's being done around that, as well as some of the implementation work. And so we've got people that are involved in both sides of the research and the analysis of what things to do, and then also doing some of that early implementation work as well. And we're really excited for the things that are happening there, and really excited for the future of both the enterprise Ethereum through a lot of what you're seeing in the roadmap here, and the mainnet Ethereum as well. And I think that's bringing us close to the end of talking through the roadmap. The one thing that I want to sort of finish as we begin to finish on that this part of the conversation is the "you heard it first here" news, which is that ConsenSys Quorum initial release, and so that's being targeted for November. And so we're excited to provide ConsenSys Quorum for you all. We're excited to be able to have this version that's going to be coming out. And that'll be our really fully supported version. It'll include the package bundles of the Java version and a Go-based version to ensure that there's the easy sort of downloads and ready for you all to be using. There'll be a technical webinar in October to talk about what's going to be happening in this sort of release, and talking about some of the tooling and things to help you work with your Ethereum networks as well. As I've been saying this, I also want to make sure that I'm really explicitly calling out that ConsenSys is really excited to be supporting the existing Java-based, Besu-based networks and the existing Go Quorum-based networks, and working through people to provide the ongoing support relationships around those networks, as well as this new ConsenSys Quorum version that's coming out. And I think we are about to come into our question and answer section. Sam, it looks like you might have some more to add, maybe to that slide
Sure.
Before we do that.
Is there a question or?
Okay, I think it's probably right for us to move straight into our question and answer time.
Sure.
I believe Grace has some of the questions that people have been asking, and will be sharing those for us.
Great, yes. Thanks everyone for all the questions. We'll probably take questions for about 10 or so minutes. We might not get through all of them, I apologize, but we'll try to get through as much as we can. So thank you, much appreciated. You can continue to drop them in the Q&A, and we'll try to run through them as much as possible. The first one is, this is for Sam. Is the JP Morgan team still working on Go Quorum? I'm not sure we mentioned that in this webinar.
Yes, I believe I addressed it indirectly, but yes, we're going to continue to working, of course, on Go Quorum, but as I mentioned, there are many other projects and services that we'll also continue to support over the next year. We'll also be working on the joint roadmap, I think, for interoperability between Besu and Go Quorum client. That's something we're going to be working closely with the ConsenSys protocol team, with Rob and Dan, of course.
Okay, good answer. Next question is, what are the differences between the Go Quorum and Hyperledger Besu privacy solutions of Orion and Tessera? Rob, I think that's for you.
Yep. So I think the privacy features around Quorum and sorry, not Quorum, around Orion and Tessera at a really high level, the two private transaction managers provide very similar functionality, and so that's where and why we talked about early on working to bring those two together. And taking the strengths of both and making sure that we have a single sort of private transaction manager that is supported and maintained going forward. And I guess with that, there's a strong commitment to, again, as I say, I want to make sure that I'm giving this message loud and clear, that we're very committed to supporting the different technologies on a long-term sort of basis. And so it's more making sure that we're getting to a spot where the two private transaction managers are available and work well, and that we've got that. We are very clear that there, and you can look at this, and this is what I'm about to say is pretty obvious, that there's two private transaction managers that both have an Apache 2 license, that are both written in Java, that both provide at a high level the same kind of functionality. Clearly, it makes a lot of sense for us to be working together and finding ways to make that work well together. And that's the direction that we see that heading in. And the details of which exact one, I think we've got some opinions on, but we want to make sure that we're picking the right code base to use as our basis, and we expect to make very clear announcements about that in the near future.
Great answer. Yeah, lots of similarities. Next question is the Besu brand being retired?
Great question, and absolutely not. So Hyperledger Besu is part of the Hyperledger Foundation. We're committed to its success, both on mainnet and as part of ConsenSys Quorum offering for enterprise Ethereum. It's going to continue to receive the investment that we've put into Hyperledger Besu over the last 2 years. It'll continue moving forward, and we're excited to continue to iterate it and drive it forward.
Great. Next question is, what does this mean for the enterprise Ethereum specification?
So the enterprise Ethereum specification is very important. We're committed to making sure that it continues to succeed, and we'll be working hard to ensure that that both clients are working well together to be implementations of that standard.
Next question is, how can businesses use ConsenSys Quorum? I think this is for Dan. Someone specifically asked about, if it's for trade finance, lending, I'd love to hear kind of more about the business applications.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam and Rob, feel free to jump in here as well. ConsenSys Quorum is use case agnostic, but we see a tremendous amount of take up around financial service use cases. So anything pertaining to digital assets, digital asset transfer, supply chain, those have been sort of the most common patterns, but those aren't the only ones. We also see things in healthcare and education and media. So it's a pretty versatile set of technology. I think what really distinguishes ConsenSys Quorum and enterprise Ethereum broadly is the digital assets component and how well it treats digital assets and the various applications of digital assets. But Sam, I'd be curious for your perspective on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I honestly think, Dan, you covered everything here. Not sure I can add much to what you've said.
And I guess the one thing to add is we are definitely seeing ConsenSys Quorum being used for the use cases that Dan is talking about. One area that is standing out at the moment is we're seeing an increasing number of people using it for CDBC sort of use cases. And ConsenSys has, and we were sharing earlier some of the work that was happening in Codifier. There's some great work that's being done to use some of those tools to help enable the CDBC use cases.
Yeah, good addition. Kind of a question that goes alongside that is, how will existing customers be impacted if, for Go Quorum and Besu?
Yeah, so we want to make it clear that this should only be good news for existing Go Quorum users. So the first change is that you'll have additional options, right? More support options, software on top of your implementations. We've walked through the roadmap, so there will be a number of enhancements and new features that the JP Morgan team has been building and that we're building and will be rolling out over the next 3, 6, 12 months and beyond. We are going to make it we have a strong commitment and really explicit goal of making it very easy for existing networks to upgrade to those new features. So everything we do has upgradability in mind, and we will make sure that everyone who's currently building on top of Quorum will continue to be successful.
Yeah, I can add down to that. So I think users that have specific requirements or specific feature requests can partner with ConsenSys to actually implement those features or prioritize those features through a partnership, and of course to receive enterprise level support as well from ConsenSys.
Great. We have maybe 2 more questions left. One thing that I don't know was explicitly called out, someone asked a good question. What is happening to Pegasus Plus? Mind explaining that, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of this deal, the Pegasus brand is being deprecated. So we love Pegasus, but it's not something we'll be talking about as an external brand for our products. And so Pegasus Plus basically maps entirely to the supported version of ConsenSys Quorum. So ConsenSys Quorum on Besu has a few additional add-ons that historically were proprietary part of Pegasus Plus. And so when you buy the supported version, you get access to those premium plugins as well. So everything is still available. Users of Pegasus Plus have been notified that their product name has been changed, but from a technology perspective, nothing changes.
Perfect. And then probably the last question we'll have, I know we have a bunch more, so I apologize if we didn't get to your question. You do have, we'll maybe drop our emails in the chat to follow up if we haven't answered your question. But the last one, which I think is kind of a good one to end on, is how do I get started with ConsenSys Quorum? And you want to take that one?
So go to consensys.net/quorum. You'll find all the materials you need there. There's pretty amazing documentation for both the Go Quorum and the Besu, the Java-based stack. And you can get started very easily, download the binaries and get going. There are some quick start examples also available. All of it is linked in the website, and we'll put the link to that in the chat right now as well.
Great, then you can wrap us up.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Sam, for joining us. Thanks, Rob, for getting up early in Australia. And thank you, everyone, for joining as well out there in the audience. If you have additional questions that we missed, I'm dropping my email in the chat right now. Feel free to reach out, and we'll try to get to all of them.
And I'm
Thank you,
dropping the
Dan.
feedback form as well. So if anyone wants to tell us how we did or what you'd like to see next time, we're always taking feedback.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all. Thanks, Dan. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Grace. And thank you, everyone else. Thank you. Bye-bye.